Secrets never stay buried forever. And in Episode 6 of Outlander Blood of My Blood, those secrets come crashing into the open with devastating force. This is not an episode about quiet moments or simple choices, but about revelations that change everything. Loyalties are tested, trust is shaken, and every decision seems to carve a deeper wound in the lives of those who are bound by family and fate. The episode begins with a heavy silence that feels louder than any battle. The camera lingers on the landscape-wide fields, stretching endlessly, as if nature itself is bracing for what is about to unfold. The stillness is deceptive because underneath it, emotions are boiling, ready to spill over. The characters are caught in a fragile pause between what has already been lost and what is yet to come. We return to the aftermath of the last episode, where bonds that once seemed unbreakable are beginning to crack. A meal shared among family and allies turns into a battlefield of unspoken words. The glances exchanged across the table are sharper than blades, and the quiet between sentences is thick with suspicion. It is here we sense that nothing in this household is as secure as it once seemed. The tone is one of unease, where every smile hides a shadow of doubt. The story pushes us back into the heart of the family drama. Blood is thicker than water, but in Outlander that blood is also a burden, heavy with history and resentment. Every character is carrying secrets like stones in their pockets, weighing them down with guilt and fear. The young face their future with uncertainty, while the older guard their past with desperation. The tension is not only about survival, but about identity, who they are, and who they are becoming. A letter arrives just before dawn, delivered quietly, as if the very act of reading it could ignite fire. It speaks of old debts and forgotten promises, but also of dangers creeping closer with every passing night. This letter becomes the silent thread running through the episode, pulling characters into confrontations they had long tried to avoid. Its words are simple, but its impact is devastating because it forces choices no one is ready to make. As daylight breaks, the setting shifts to the estate grounds, where conversations take place in hushed tones, but with piercing intensity. Characters walk side by side, their eyes fixed ahead, yet their voices betray the storm raging inside. Promises of loyalty clash with fears of betrayal, and every sentence carries the weight of history. The fields around them seem endless yet claustrophobic, trapping them in a cycle of duty and sacrifice. This opening section sets the stage for everything to come. It is not about grand action, but about the quiet unraveling of trust. It reminds us that the most dangerous battles are not fought with weapons, but with words and silence. Episode 6 makes it clear from the start that what lies ahead is not just a test of strength, but of faith, love, and the fragile threads that hold people together. The calm of the early morning cannot last forever because tension finds its way into every corner of this house. Episode 6 moves us into the heart of conflict, not with a sudden shout or strike, but with quiet words that wound deeper than any blade. A conversation begins between those who still believe they can hold everything together, and those who know the cracks are already spreading too far. It feels like watching glass slowly fracture. You cannot hear the break, but you can see the lines growing wider. One of the strongest moments comes when past promises are dragged back into the present. A father's oath long buried resurfaces with brutal clarity. It was an oath made in loyalty, but it has become a chain, heavy and unyielding. The younger generation listens to this revelation in silence, their faces unreadable, but their hearts pounding. To them, it is not just a story from another time, but a reminder that the choices of yesterday are shaping the lives they must live today. Blood binds them, but it also traps them. There is a gathering in the main hall. Candles flicker on the stone walls, casting shadows that seem alive. Words are exchanged with care, but the meaning beneath them is sharp and dangerous. Each character speaks as if balancing on a knife's edge, careful not to reveal too much, yet unable to fully hide what they feel. Loyalty is questioned in whispers, and the threat of betrayal lingers in every pause. The air is thick with the knowledge that trust has already begun to rot. The letter introduced earlier continues to haunt the scene. Its contents are not shouted aloud but hinted at in fragments. We understand enough to know that someone among them is not as faithful as they appear. The tension becomes unbearable because the audience is caught in the same place as the characters, uncertain of who to trust, but sure that someone's truth will cut deep. Every look across the table is a weapon. Every silence is an accusation. Then comes the subtle yet powerful shift. A younger voice dares to speak against the weight of tradition. It is not rebellion shouted with fire, but defiance spoken softly yet firmly. This is the sound of a new generation refusing to be crushed beneath the mistakes of the old. The reaction is immediate and fierce. Some faces turn with anger, others with fear. The balance of power that once seemed steady is now trembling. What makes this section so unique is how it shows conflict without swords or soldiers. The drama here is woven in glances and half-finished sentences, and in the way characters carry themselves across the room. It is a battle of hearts, where silence wounds as deeply as action. And through it all, the letter sits unspoken, but undeniable, a reminder that the past cannot be ignored, and the future will not wait. By the end of this act, we know one thing clearly. The family that once seemed united is no longer whole. Invisible lines have been drawn. Every alliance now feels fragile, and every word spoken carries the weight of betrayal. The stage is set for choices that will either break them apart forever or force them into unity against a greater threat. Either way, there is no going back. The fragile balance does not hold for long. Once suspicion enters a household, it grows like a shadow stretching across every room. Episode 6 turns from quiet unease into something far more dangerous, as words give way to actions, and truths that were hidden begin to slip into the light. What begins as a single doubt becomes a storm no one can control. The letter continues to act as a silent poison. It is carried from hand to hand, never fully read aloud, yet always present. Each character reacts to it in their own way. For some, it is a reminder of debts that can never be repaid. For others, it is proof that betrayal is already at their door. Every stolen glance at the parchment feels like a confession, even when no words are spoken. The very presence of the letter fractures what little trust still exists. But the heart of this section is not the letter itself. It is the confrontation it sparks. A heated exchange unfolds in the courtyard, where stone walls echo every word, making them impossible to escape. Voices that once spoke in careful tones now rise sharp and unrestrained. The past is dragged out like a weapon. Old betrayals are thrown into the open, not to resolve them but to wound. The air is electric, filled with anger but also with pain. The kind of pain that comes when people love deeply yet feel betrayed even more deeply. Amid this chaos, one character takes center stage. They speak not with fury but with sorrow. Their words cut through the noise because they are not born of rage, but of truth long denied. This moment becomes the turning point. Instead of calming the storm, it deepens it. By admitting what no one else dared to say, they shatter the illusion of unity. What was once hidden behind duty and silence is now exposed raw and undeniable. The imagery in this section is striking. The camera lingers on faces twisted by fear and grief. Hands tremble, not with weapons, but with the weight of choices too heavy to bear. A young face hardens with determination, while an older one breaks beneath the burden of memory. The courtyard becomes less a place of stone, and more a stage for human frailty. No battle could be more devastating than this battle of words, because it leaves wounds no blade could heal. And yet even here, amid the shouting and the silence, there are hints of something larger. The argument is not just about family or loyalty. It is about survival in a world that punishes both weakness and defiance. Every word spoken is not only personal, but political. Every accusation does not simply echo through the family, but through the fragile alliances beyond their walls. This is why the fight matters. It is not just about them. It is about what their fracture will unleash. By the end of this section, the house feels changed forever. Even when the voices fade and silence returns, nothing is the same. Trust has been shattered. The future is uncertain, and the sense that something darker is closing in becomes impossible to ignore. The storm has not passed. It has only begun. Night falls quickly, and with it, the sense that something irreversible is about to take place. The halls that seemed tense in daylight now echo with a silence so heavy it feels alive. Shadows crawl along the walls as candlelight flickers, and each flame seems to tremble in anticipation. This is not calm. This is the pause before a storm explodes. It is here that betrayal reveals itself. A truth slips free not from the enemy outside, but from within the family itself. Someone who swore loyalty is unmasked as the very reason the danger has drawn so close. The revelation is devastating not only because of what it means for their survival, but because of who it is. The betrayal is not from a distant ally, but from blood. The wound cuts deeper than any sword. The confrontation that follows is raw and brutal, though not in steel, but in spirit. Rage bursts forth like wildfire. Words are hurled like weapons. Accusations strike harder than fists, and for a moment it feels as though the family will tear itself apart from the inside. The sense of inevitability is overwhelming. This is not conflict that can be smoothed over by apologies. This is a break that will leave scars forever. The scene builds to a moment of silence more terrifying than the shouting. The betrayer stands, exposed, their secret no longer hidden. The others stare not with anger but with a hollow disbelief. It is the quiet recognition that the bond they thought unshakable has shattered. In that silence, the weight of the episode crashes down. Family is supposed to mean safety, but here it has become the sharpest danger. Outside the walls, the wind rises, carrying the sound of branches snapping and shutters rattling. It feels as if nature itself knows the world inside this house has changed forever. The climax does not end with resolution, but with fracture. A family once bound by loyalty now stands in pieces, and the threat pressing in from beyond is closer than ever. By the end of this act, the path forward is no longer about unity, but about survival. Choices must be made, lines must be drawn, and loyalties will never again be the same. The climax leaves us with the certainty that nothing can return to what it was. The storm has broken, and its damage will echo through every moment that follows. When the storm of voices falls silent, what remains is not peace, but ruin. The hall is emptied of sound, yet filled with the weight of everything that has been said. The betrayal hangs in the air like smoke, impossible to breathe, yet impossible to escape. The family stands scattered not as a unit, but as fragments of something that once was whole. Each person withdraws into themselves, carrying anger, sorrow, or shame as though it were armor. The betrayer does not flee. Instead, they remain in the room, head bowed but unbroken. It is a posture that speaks not of guilt, but of defiance, as though admitting what they have done is not surrender but survival. Their silence is louder than any confession. It tells the others that they chose this path willingly and would choose it again. The wound cuts deeper because the betrayal is not a mistake, but a decision. The others struggle to find words. Some cannot look at the betrayer at all, turning away as if the sight itself is too painful. Others stare unblinking, refusing to let silence soften the truth. Every glance is a judgment. Every breath feels like a trial. The family bond, which once seemed like a shield, now feels like a chain dragging them down into despair. In the quiet of night, different reactions unfold in separate corners of the estate. One sits alone, gripping the letter, as though holding it could provide answers that are not there. Another paces the corridors, restless eyes darting toward the windows where shadows move beyond the glass. A third kneels in prayer, yet their voice trembles with doubt, betraying a faith shaken to its core. These moments of solitude reveal the true cost of betrayal. It is not just trust that has been broken, but the sense of belonging itself. The younger generation feels the wound most deeply. For them, the betrayal is not only about danger or survival, but about the crumbling of the world they believed in. They grew up trusting the bonds of family and the strength of shared blood. Now they see that blood can turn against itself, and that survival may demand sacrifice, even of love. Their faces harden not with anger, but with a new understanding of what the world truly is. The setting mirrors this collapse. The once warm hall feels cold stone walls pressing in like a tomb. The flicker of candles that once brought comfort now seem fragile, ready to be snuffed out by the smallest breath. Outside, the wind has grown into a howl, rattling doors and shutters, as though nature itself is mourning. Every detail of the environment echoes the fracture within the family, reminding us that nothing is untouched by betrayal. And yet amid the ruin there is the faintest spark of resolve. It comes not from the betrayer, but from those left broken by them. In whispered conversations there is talk not of forgiveness, but of survival. The realization spreads that if they cannot trust each other fully, they must at least stand together long enough to face the greater threat outside. It is not unity born of love, but of necessity. This fragile resolve will guide them into what comes next, though it may never heal what has been lost. By the close of this section, the episode shifts from fury to aftermath, from noise to silence. It is a silence heavy with consequences. The betrayal cannot be undone, the family cannot return to what it was. But the story does not end in ruin. Instead, it bends toward survival, toward the possibility that even in brokenness, there is a way forward, though it will demand sacrifices none are ready to make. The aftermath of betrayal lingers like a shadow that cannot be shaken. Yet Episode 6 does more than simply show the pain of broken trust. It weaves its story around larger themes that echo far beyond the walls of this house. Every choice, every whispered word, every silence becomes part of a greater pattern, one that speaks not only of family, but of destiny. At its heart, this episode asks what it means to be bound by blood. The characters are tied together by lineage, but blood in this story is never simple. It is both blessing and curse. Blood gives them identity, but it also carries debts, promises, and betrayals that none of them chose, yet all must bear. In the flicker of candlelight, we see that family is not just love but obligation, and that obligation can suffocate as much as it protects. Another theme rising in this episode is the cost of survival. Again and again, the question is whispered whether survival is worth the price, if it demands the sacrifice of loyalty or honor. Some argue that survival is the only thing that matters, that without life there can be no love, no hope, no future. Others hold fiercely to the belief that survival without honor is not living, but surrender. This clash of values turns every decision into a battlefield. Even silence becomes a choice. Even inaction becomes a betrayal. The imagery reinforces these ideas with haunting beauty. The estate, once a place of warmth, now feels like a labyrinth of stone and shadow. Candles are placed in narrow corridors where their light cannot banish. The darkness but only remind us of how much darkness there is. The wind outside howls through the trees, bending branches that creak like voices warning of what is to come. Every frame whispers that fate is closing in, and that no one can outrun it. There is also the theme of generational burden. The older characters cling to promises made long ago, convinced that duty to the past must guide every choice. The younger ones look at these promises with resentment, seeing them as chains rather than honor. This divide captures the essence of the episode. It is not just about one betrayal, but about the endless weight of history pressing down on those who never asked to carry it. The past and future collide in every heated exchange, leaving the present fractured. Even love takes on a darker meaning. Here, love is shown not as comfort, but as vulnerability. Those who love most fiercely are those most wounded by betrayal. Every embrace feels fragile, every promise of loyalty sounds like a prayer whispered against the inevitable. The story makes it clear that love is both the greatest strength and the sharpest weakness, because it gives the enemy the weapon of loss. And through all of this, the letter remains the symbol of truth. Its parchment worn, its words heavy, it represents the way secrets cannot remain buried. No matter how far one tries to run from the past, it always returns written in ink that cannot be erased. The letter is not just a plot device, it is the embodiment of destiny itself. It reminds us that in Outlander, the past is never truly gone. It lives, it breathes, and it demands to be answered. By the close of this section, the episode has transformed from personal drama into something larger than the characters themselves. We are no longer watching just a family in conflict. We are witnessing the struggle between love and duty, between survival and honor, between past and future. Episode 6 becomes a meditation on what it means to carry blood in your veins, and whether that blood is salvation or curse. As the night deepens, the house grows quieter, but the silence does not bring rest. Every corner of the estate carries the echo of what has been said and done. No one sleeps easily. Some walk the corridors restless and alert. Others sit alone staring into the flames of the dwindling fire, as though searching for answers in the shifting glow. The sense is clear. This is the calm after destruction, a fragile pause before the storm returns even fiercer. The betrayer remains under watch, but not yet cast out. Their presence is a wound that refuses to close. Some call for punishment, swift and final. Others argue that they may still be needed for survival even if trust has been shattered. This debate splits the family further, making every choice heavier. Forgiveness is not spoken of because no one believes it possible. Instead, the question that haunts the night is whether survival can be bought with the help of someone who has already broken their loyalty. And then the outside threat makes itself known. At first, it is only a sound carried by the wind. A horse's distant cry, a rustle of branches too heavy to be the breeze. The watchers at the edge of the estate return pale with fear. Torches have been spotted in the distance, moving closer through the darkness. What was once suspicion is now certainty. The enemy waits just beyond the horizon, and they are no longer patient. The family gathers once more in the Great Hall. This time the air is not filled with accusations, but with dread. The choices are few, and none are safe. To fight may mean ruin. To surrender may mean slavery. To flee may mean scattering forever. Each face is lit by the dim glow of firelight, every expression carrying the weight of fear and determination. The younger ones stand taller now, their eyes fierce with the fire of survival. The older ones bear the weariness of those who know too well what is coming. The letter is laid upon the table one final time. Its words no longer just a secret, but a prophecy fulfilled. The enemy is here, and the past has delivered them to the gates. The family's fractures remain raw, yet necessity forces them into a fragile alignment. There will be no forgiveness tonight, but there must be unity if any are to survive. The tension between them is not healed but buried beneath the urgency of what waits outside, and then the moment of silence breaks. The door shudders under a heavy knock, followed by another, and then another. The sound reverberates through the hall, shaking the very air. The camera lingers on the faces of those inside, showing fear, anger, and a grim resolve. The final shot is of the door, as the wood begins to splinter under the force of what waits outside. The episode ends not with resolution, but with the promise of war. Betrayal remains unresolved, loyalty hangs by a thread, and the threat beyond the walls has finally arrived. Episode 6 leaves us at the edge of the storm, forcing us to hold our breath until the story continues. Blood has bound them, Betrayal has broken them, and now destiny comes knocking.